Hey guys, it's Kevin with my review for technically this week of Big Brother, episodes 6 through 7. Once again, it is kind of hard to count this as an actual week. The fact that there was 2 evictions this week, I figured, again, I'm going to try to play it by eviction, and that is exactly what I am going to do here. I'm going to talk about all the major things that went down this week, what I thought of everything, and where I think we're going to go for, heading into the next week. So let's just get into it right now. So this week in general, it's kind of hard to talk about without talking about the events of last week. Of course, last week Ross was HOH. He was so back and forth about, do I get a Shannon out? Do I try to backdoor her? Or do I just take the safe way out and get someone like a Keshia or an Omarosa? Should I really take Shannon out? Is this really the right time to do so? Obviously, it ended up not going that way at all. Keshia was, she, of course, did go home for a very, I guess, crucial reason, but it is still pretty funny, just the whole circumstance and the timing of it all, and everything that went down there. But obviously, because of that plan falling through, which you could see that they really were set on, getting out Shannon and backdooring her, most of this week focuses on them, wanting to actually, get her out and finally follow through on the plan. And that basically is everything we do get this week. It's everyone doing what they can to, do what they can to get Shannon out, but at the same time keep her on their good side if the plan does fall through, which we'll get into that right now. So I'm going to go by positives and negatives here. I want to talk about my positives. Right off the bat, I said this before in my last review, and I'll say it again. Ari and Brandi are like the MVPs of this season. Again, I truly can't believe that I'm sitting here right now and saying that 2 of the best players this season are Ariadna, Gutiérrez, and Brandi Glanville. 2 people who I thought for sure would be either just a floater who would just sit there until they actually had to play, or would just be someone who, doesn't really do anything and just gets evicted like week 2. That's what I thought for sure was going to happen, but they've proven to be much more of a force to be reckoned with, and what's so great about it is that no one really suspects it. I mean, sure, Ari does end up winning the HOH this week, but even with that, no one really is blaming her for what's going down. Sure, she is the HOH, but she's not really in the conversation of who do we get out next. She's more in the conversation of who do we want to align ourselves with, because she's basically doing what they want her to do. However, that's not really the case. Ari and Brandi had their own agenda. They very well knew what they wanted to do. In fact, it was their idea to get Shannon out. Ross and Marissa have just basically taken a lot of credit for it, when in reality, Ari and Brandi basically concocted the plan and got into Ross's ear, and that's kind of how the whole thing started. So again, I think really a lot of credit is given to these 2, and I'm glad they're getting that edit. I'm glad they're not just making it seem like Ross is a mastermind or that Marissa is this amazing player, because that's not the case. Ross and Marissa we'll get to in a little bit, but Ari and Brandi, again, they are just really dominating this game right now, and if they can stay as under the radar as they really are and can continue to play this just really smart game of getting into everyone's ears but not really making a huge target for themselves, I think they're going to go really far. Honestly, I think one of them, or both even, might be sitting in the finale, because I really think they're playing that good of a game. I don't really think they're on anyone's radar right now. They very much are just seen as just very smaller threats that could possibly be towards the end of the game. But again, no one really is seeing them as target number 1. And the fact that they have had a hand in basically all the collateral damage and all the stuff that's gone down this week is just really impressive. And I really do love what they've been doing this season so far. Again, I can't believe that I am rooting for them as much as I am. But honestly, I'm just really loving what they're doing. I think they're playing the game exactly right. Brandi, everyone just thinks thinks is this really dumb blonde who likes to drink a lot and says a lot of inappropriate things, and people just think that Ari's just a floater. They don't really think much of them, and that is exactly the way to play this game, especially when you have a lot of big personalities in the house, like an Omarosa, like a Ross, like a Shannon. I mean, there are a lot of big people, like a James even. I mean, there are a lot of big personalities here, and the fact that they are able to play this game so under the radar and not really get any sort of accountability for it, I really do love seeing. I like that no one really is targeting them right now. I think they're playing an incredible game, and I really do hope that, I sincerely hope that they continue to do as well as they are now, because they easily are the biggest surprise of this season, and definitely for me is so far my winner pick of the entire season for sure. I absolutely love what they're doing here. But of course, the biggest character in all of this week is, of course, Shannon. Let's just talk about her, because I'm going to be honest with you, as much as I do think Shannon did play hard too fast, I can't necessarily blame her for what she did. I mean, she was in a position where she wanted to do whatever she can to make sure a guy wouldn't win. That was their specific agenda, was the girls wanted to stick together, and Shannon, you know, James was still up there, and she really wasn't sure. You know, she thought that he was so set on winning HOH, which he probably would have. If Shannon would have come down, James would have easily won that HOH, and he would have gotten one of the girls out. So Shannon was so set on making sure that James was their first target and that the girls were in power, and that is why she did win that first HOH. So I don't really think that's something we should blame her for. I think it makes sense why she did that. And then, of course, there is the POV. A lot of people have talked about this, the whole her and the responsibilities thing. Sure, it was a pretty big word. I totally understand, especially compared to the other words. Everyone was spelling like 4-letter words and things like that. In general, when it comes to Shannon, though, I'm not really going to blame her, because I do think she played the game that she wanted to play for the most part. I mean, it didn't go her way at all, unfortunately. The timing really wasn't the best, but I do think she truly did show her cards here. And if they were to bring her back, say like for like an all-star season or something like that, I'm not saying she's like an amazing player or anything, but she could have been. I mean, Shannon really had all the skills to be an amazing player. She is a very avid feed watcher. She's been a huge Big Brother watcher since the beginning. She knows the game. She knows very well how to manipulate everyone, and she did a really great job with that. And I honestly, because of how great she did play this game, I don't really blame her for kind of just giving up this week, because sure, there was a part of her that did in fact give up, but there also was the part of her that wanted to win, and I think people are being a little too hard on her. I mean, we have to remember, she does have emotions. Things are going to get to her, and there is a lot of pressure within that house, and especially when everyone is getting on her and saying she's like this amazing player. I personally, you know, if I were in that situation and I knew that I was a target and everyone's saying, oh, you're this amazing player, that is a huge honor to someone. And especially when you're sitting on that block, you really are regretting a lot of things. And you're like, wow, I mean, I really wish I did this. I really wish I did that. Do I really deserve that title? I think that really is what was going through Shannon's head. And a lot of that is attributed to Ross, who we'll get to him in a little bit. But Shannon in general, I really do not blame her for kind of pouting her way through this week. I mean, no one was really on her side. She tried to strike so many deals, and there are a lot of people at fault for this. I don't think Shannon, honestly, is at fault for her game going the way it did. I think she legitimately tried. She tried to ally with James. She tried to make amends with Omarosa. She tried to work with Marissa, but nothing really fell through, and again, it's not necessarily her fault. So, yes, it is disappointing to see Shannon really lose everything, pretty much. I mean, that really is what this week consists of. Shannon lost everything. She didn't have any allies. She was all by herself. I think she pretty much knew she was a target, even though they were trying to tell her she wasn't. I think she knew very well that she wasn't. She knows the game. She knows how this stuff works. And I think because of that, I did really feel bad for her. I think she genuinely could have been a really great player, and it is definitely a bit saddening to see how quickly her game really did fall apart. It definitely was unfortunate for sure. Now we're gonna get to the negative stuff, though, because easily, like I said, if Ari and Brandi are playing the best game, Ross and Marissa are the complete opposite. I mean, these two have made so many horrible decisions just within these last few weeks. I mean, right off the bat, let's talk about Ross, because going into the season, everyone thought, you know, when everyone had a winner pick, I think everyone collectively agreed that Ross Mathews was the best option. He was going to be this amazing player. You know, he knows Big Brother. He's good with this stuff. He could have played like an Aaron Andy Herron type of game. But here's the difference between Andy and Ross, and, you know, I am all for that. I particularly was not a huge fan of Andy. I did not really like his gameplay necessarily, but it won him the game, and he overall did a really, you know, looking back, he did a really successful job at completely pushing the target off of himself and never really making it seem like anything was his fault. He did a really good job with that overall. Ross is the complete opposite. The problem with Ross is similar to the problem with Paul, which, again, let me just say, Ross is not nearly as bad as Paul. Paul was, you know, just so volatile, and he was so set on this mob mentality, and Ross does not have that. But what Ross does have is the really bad jury management that Paul had, and especially when you're playing in a game where these players go home, but not only are they going home to watch the rest of the season, they are going to come back on the jury. I think Ross needs to be very careful with what he says, because what he said to Shannon, I understand he was trying to be nice to her. He was trying to make it seem like that he did have this final 4 deal with him, Marissa, and James, you know, with her, Marissa, and James. I totally understand that. But it just seemed too unbelievable. I mean, going as far as to call her the greatest Big Brother player of all time, that's a little much. I think, honestly, anyone, no one would believe that, honestly. You could go on, but it's literally been 2 weeks. There's no possible way that Shannon is one of the greats of all time. I think she could have been. I genuinely think she could have been, but honestly, I think Ross is the biggest reason why her game really did fall through here, because he just did such a horrible job of, you know, trying to make it seem like everything's okay. It was, you could tell it was so obvious to Shannon that she was a target, and Ross did everything in his power to not do that, and because that, everyone is now gunning for Ross, because again, they knew that he was basically the sole, or at least to them, they don't really know of the work that Ari and Brandi did. To them, Ross and Marissa, this was completely Ross and Marissa's idea. They were the ones who concocted the plan to go after Shannon, so because of this, they are pretty much going to become public enemy number 1, and they kind of did it to themselves. I mean, there was a much better way for them to play this. What they should have done is only talk to the people they truly trust, and the problem is, their group is just too big at this point. Omarosa especially, you cannot trust her. She really showed her cards this week, and really showed that I don't really know what Omarosa is doing. Her game's kind of all over the place at this point, but she definitely is not on really anyone's side. She really is only playing for herself, which again, I do like seeing. We haven't seen that in Big Brother in a long time, and I do definitely like seeing that from Omarosa, but she is the last person to ever trust, and the fact that he went to her and told her all this stuff, I think it's just dumb, honestly. Ari and Brandi, that I completely understand. Those, yes, you definitely can trust them. Marissa, yes, you can trust her, but telling Omarosa and Keshia was completely the wrong idea here. I think he did not at all do a good job with that, and again, the biggest problem is he just can't make up his damn mind. I mean, he kept going back and forth between the two, and I think that definitely was a problem. But again, let's talk about this week, because once again, what he's doing to Shannon, it's just so obvious that he's not working with her. I mean, she asked him point blank, this wasn't on the show, but she asked him on the feeds, you know, well, if you really want this Final Four deal, why don't you try to do something about it? Why don't you try to tell people this, you know, flip the vote so I can stay? And Ross didn't have a answer for her, and you know, because of this, it really does put a target on himself. And again, what Ross isn't thinking about is that Shannon is going to be on the jury, and Shannon is a huge Big Brother fan, and because of this, This means that if she were to watch back Ross's gameplay and see how adamant he was on going after Shannon, this is really going to put him in a bad light. And Shannon could very well work the jury so they could actively vote against Ross. And I really don't think this is putting Ross in a good position at all. And I don't think this is something that Ross is really thinking about. And it's unfortunate because, again, I want Ross to be a good player. I see legitimate potential in him, but he's completely squandering all of it, and it's just really disappointing to see. And Marissa's not better, unfortunately. Look, Marissa is very fun on this show. She's had a lot of really fun lines. She's got a very bubbly personality, and, you know, she's got one of those smiles where it's just kind of contagious. When she says something funny, you know, you can't help but laugh. She's just very entertaining in that way. But as a player, she's pretty bad, honestly. She's made so many decisions that I think were just completely baffling. I mean, why would you ally with Ross? Honestly, I don't understand her decision making here. Shannon, this was totally the way to do this. The way to do this is that Shannon should have gone to Omarosa, told her that they had something, you know, maybe she could try to patch up things there. That obviously didn't work. This should have given Marissa incentive to possibly work with Shannon. Why? Well, because Shannon is a really great player, and Shannon does know Big Brother so well, and the fact that two of them do know each other in real life, this really could have gone very well for them. I think, you know, Marissa and Shannon really could have worked very well, similar to how Ari and Brandi were. They could have been very under the radar, but it just never really worked out, and I'm legitimately disappointed with Marissa. I think, you know, at this point, she's just doing whatever Ross says. She's going, you know, she's just basically just, the two of them are just working in unison together. There's not really any difference in terms of their gameplay. And the fact that everyone is putting so much trust in Marissa, I just don't really understand it. She's not really that great of a player. She's not playing the game very well at all. She's way too focused on this week when you should always be thinking about long term. That's the thing with these players. You have to think about what's at the end. And I don't think either Ross or Marissa are doing that. They're focusing on just this one specific week when they really should be thinking about the weeks to come. That's something that Ari and Brandi are doing extremely well, but they really aren't. And I think, honestly, again, this is really going to hurt their gameplay in the next few weeks. And I would not be surprised if they leave as soon as the next eviction. That's how much I think they have put a target on themselves. They have a lot of ownership to, you know, they have a lot to take ownership for. And if Ross really wants to go far in this game, he just needs to start admitting that, yes, this was my fault. Yes, I did the wrong thing. But the way he needs to do it is not seem guilty. He needs to seem as if, yes, I did this, but you know, he needs to just, you know, especially in the jury when he does the goodbye messages, you know, he's doing something very similar to what Paul did, where he's just kind of blatantly lying to them and not really telling the truth. I did like that he told Shannon the truth in that, but I just feel he's not playing the game very well at all. He needs to start taking ownership for things and needs to start thinking more of long-term stuff, because he's really not doing that, and I think it really is starting to hurt his game. Side note, though, someone who I think has completely turned around as a player is James. James was someone who this first week I said, this guy has no idea what he's doing, it's hilarious to watch, and he was a very good villain. However, James has completely turned himself around to where I genuinely think he could actually take himself pretty far in this game, because he actually is working with everyone pretty well here. I like that he's pretty much taking any sort of deal that is given to him. I understand why he didn't want to work with Shannon, because again, Shannon was a target. James knew that he was a target from day one, and if he worked with someone else who was a target, this would immediately make him a target as well. So he just wanted to do what he can to take the target off his back, and I like that he is working with Omarosa, Ari, Brandi, Ross, Marissa. I think it is a good alliance overall, and I'm interested in seeing if he actually does decide to stick with this alliance. I think it is actually good for him. However, I think even better is to ally with someone like, say, Mark, because Mark is someone who is completely under the radar. I mean, Mark is yet to do anything really detrimental in this game whatsoever, really is yet to anything that's big or eventful. And I think it's going to come. I think eventually Mark is going to cause some sort of waves within the house, but again, he just really has been able to make that solid connection. And James allying with Mark, this would be perfect because these two could work together and they could steamroll towards the end of the game, honestly. They really could. And I think James does have definite potential. He definitely has convinced me that he is a bit of a better of a player than I suspected, and that is something that I really do love seeing from him. Someone like Metta, that's just never going to work out. Metta, I don't think he's ever going to understand this game whatsoever. Most of this week consisted of him just hanging out with this owl and acting like this owl was his wife, which was just really weird overall. But again, Metta's just one of those players that he's just so fun to watch because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and it's just a lot of fun overall. James, though, I do think has legitimate potential. I do think James could take himself pretty far, and I'm interested in seeing really where this does go in the coming weeks overall. Also, just a side note before I get into everything going on in the next week and what I think is really going to go down, I understand that obviously the season is expedited and because that they have to rush through a lot of stuff, but they really need to rethink how they're structuring these 2-hour episodes because honestly, they're really boring. There's a whole chunk of stuff they could easily just remove from it. Like, did we really need a whole segment on Marissa admiring James's body and him doing like the striptease? We really did not need that segment in there. We did not need so much attention paid to Metta's owl and everything that's going on. We just didn't need this stuff. I feel like it's just padding. We don't really need it in there. And it's because of the fact they have 2 hours, and I guess there's enough to fit in there. Like, there's a lot of gameplay going on, and they could have easily fit in there. I don't think they need to put this all in. You know, they have to rush through the season. They don't really have a choice. It's got to be rush, and it's got to be in this breakneck pace. There really isn't a way to get around that. But when you have these 2-hour episodes, it just does not really feel like they're using them to their advantage, and I really thought they were going to. And so far, at least, they're not really impressing me. The season in general is impressing me. It's just the structure of these 2-hour episodes I really am not a huge fan of thus far. So let's talk about where I think we're headed moving forward. I think going into next week, there's going to be 2 initial targets. Now, of course, I already know who's won HOH, but I'm not going to divulge into that right now because the show hasn't already revealed it. Right off the bat, I think that the biggest target heading next week either is going to be Ross or Omarosa. As we know, we heard conversations that Ross and Marissa, they really don't trust Omarosa. Brandi and Ari certainly don't trust Omarosa. So if she doesn't win HOH, she definitely is going to be the biggest target. However, if not, I think Ross is pretty much the next to go on the chopping block because no one really trusts him right now. People seem to want to keep him to the end, and I don't really know why. Omarosa in particular seems like she doesn't want to keep him, she wants to keep him to the end, and I don't really get that. I think Ross is someone that you should get rid of immediately. Because if you ally with him, he's just going to tarnish your game. He's going to go around and tell everyone what's going on. And again, he's not really playing this scavenger game in the way that Andy did. He hasn't been as secretive about it. He's been a lot more public. He doesn't know how to hide things. And I think that really is the downfall of his game. So yes, I do think Ross is probably going to be the next target. If he leaves, it'll be his own fault. And I will not be surprised if that ends up happening. Marissa also could very well be a target heading into next week. Or it could be a dull week and we get someone like Mark out or something like that. But more than likely, I think that Ross is probably our biggest target. I think James has actually done a good job in getting the target off of himself. Some people may say, oh, James is the next to go. I don't really think so. I think James legitimately has shown that he is interested in working with this group. And if he actually does agree to work in this alliance and sticks to it, I think this could actually do James, do wonders for him. And this could actually go really well for him. So I do think James actually could possibly save himself here. We'll have to see really where that does go. But other than that, guys, that's really it for my review of this week of Celebrity Big Brother. Let me know what you guys thought of these 2 episodes overall. Love your thoughts on it. Again, I'm really enjoying this season overall. I'm interested in seeing really where we do go. And again, it's just nice to see players who are actually playing for themselves and aren't just sucking this person's dick, over and over again for many weeks. We're not really getting that. We're not getting people going to the pawn and telling them, oh, you're the pawn. It just feels like classic Big Brother, and that's just what I really do love overall. But that's my review. Hope you enjoy. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.